guys, I just wanted to give you my quick initial review on the AGT H12R. So I got this from a guy who orders about 3 or 4 of them at a time, and then he just kind of sells them off. That way I don't have to deal with all the shipping and handling and international customs and everything that most people deal with when they order one of these guys. And so far, I've been pretty impressed. Now, you have to set your expectations appropriately because it is only a 1-ton excavator, so you're not going to be ripping out stumps in one go. It's going to take a minute. But it has been a lot faster so far than using a shovel. I started digging a septic test pit by hand. I got about 2 feet down in 4 hours, and I have gotten about double that now with the AGT in less than a half hour's worth of work. So it is going to save you a bunch of time. I also got an implement package for it. I did buy that separately, and it's got a couple extra buckets, couple post hole diggers, a stump ripper, quick disconnect, and a bunch of brush rakes. And so that should make this a lot more useful for me here on the home site. All right, so when I bought it from this guy, it came with a toolbox that had a grease gun and a couple extra, I think it had like an air filter and a wrench in it. It comes with a 12-inch digging bucket, and he had already filled it with some gas and some hydraulic fluid for me. I don't know if it comes with those things from the factory, but I was able to run it obviously for a couple hours without having to do anything for it. All right, so some pros and cons. So far, I really like the size. I'm able to get it through my gates. I'm able to get it through other softer areas without, without it sinking down into the mud. It's been really easy for me to operate. I've never operated an excavator before this, and I already feel way more proficient after a couple hours than I did initially. Other things I like that it comes with a roof. That's been really nice in the sun. It also rained here a little bit, and so that kept most of the rain off of your engine compartment and your seat. Although I do plan on building a shelter for it at some point here before the winter hits. Let's see here. Other things I like about it, they put a light on there, and I was digging, at dusk, and the light was actually really nice to have. So that was a nice feature they threw on there for you. Another nice feature that I like they put on there is there's actually on the side of the engine is a pull cord. So if you have trouble with your battery, you can still get your excavator started and drive it back or whatever you need to do. I like this one. It came with a fixed thumb. You can get an additional hydraulic cylinder to make it a movable thumb, but right now it's just fixed, and so far it's been working out okay. And it's just nice to have one of those thumbs for when you need it. So far, I've been working on the septic test pit, and I have dug out a somewhat large vine maple stump with it, and it was able to pick that thing up and throw it around like a nobody's business. Another thing I really like about this was the cost, and that's probably why most people are getting the AGT. So I bought this from that guy for $4,700. And then I spent $2,300 on the implements package. So it's a total of $7,000 for this guy right here. When I was getting bids to have other people come in and do this work, they were giving me a range of $100 to $150 an hour to bring their equipment out and then do all the digging for me. So, and that doesn't include all the setup fees. They'd have to bring a water truck out and all the other stuff they have to deal with as a business. And so you can do the math and see how fast you can get this to pay off for you. So far, I've been pretty happy with it. All right, so some of the cons. First con is, well, it's a Chinese piece of equipment. So there's going to be some minor issues with it. Before I bought it, I did go on and I watched a bunch of videos on problems people had with them. So at least I'm aware of some issues it can have. So common issues that I've been finding online are hydraulic hoses that rub and bolts that are loose. And so I'm going to give this excavator a quick one over now that I've run it for a couple hours. I'm going to check for any rub spots on the hydraulic lines. All right, so this is actually rubbing here, and here. I can already feel little gouges out of the hydraulic lines. It's also rubbing here. And here, inside the engine. And I'm going to check for bolts that are loose. And so I can get those tightened up, and hopefully it won't be as big of an issue. Otherwise, there's been a bunch of videos out where people are like, hey, I've had this thing for a year and never had an issue with it. So I kind of rolled the dice a little bit, and we're going to see how long I can get this thing to last, and hopefully it will save me a bunch of money in the long run. Another thing that I'm not super happy about, but it could just be me and my experience level, is the drive controls and the up and down of the arm. It's pretty jerky, and it can be kind of rough sometimes when you're driving it. Again, I've only been driving it for about 2.5 hours. So there's some room for improvement there. And I have noticed that if you use multiple controls at the same time, then it tends to be a lot smoother. And so if you lift your arm and curl it in or extend it, that's going to be a lot smoother on the controls as opposed to just raising one arm at a time. Another thing that I found this morning was the gas tank. It's tucked underneath the seat, and there's a couple of support bars that run across the top, and it just kind of makes it difficult to add gas, and I ended up spilling a little bit across the top. That said, it did have a built-in fuel filter as you're filling it, which is nice because it's good to have a filter on there, but it also doesn't really allow you to see how much fuel you have without actually lifting it up. And speaking of that, I would say another con is there is no fuel gauge on the lid or anywhere on this thing, and so it's hard to see how much fuel or hydraulic fluid, for that matter, that I have. Although I don't know if they can even put a gauge on hydraulic fluid tanks. Another thing I noticed is that it really could use a drive mode. So when you're just driving it out to your field, it's really, really slow. And I'm not sure what the official speed of it is, but it's slower than walking speed. And so with us having 10 acres out here, if you were working on one end of the property and you needed to get it to the other end of the property for like a single post hole, your drive time might make it worth just walking a post hole digger over there and digging it real quick. Depends on the time of year, I guess. But yeah, it drives incredibly slow. So it's also not good for driving on asphalt. So we have an asphalt driveway on part of the property, and turning on that and just driving on it in general, it's been rubbing off the rubber tracks, which is probably a consistent issue for rubber tracks anyways, and I'm just not aware of that. But now you are. All right. I will say, overall, I've been very happy with this purchase. I think it's going to pay off in the long run. And let's show you guys how this thing drives around and digs a little bit. All right, so something I forgot to mention earlier is that some people experience issues with overheating, specifically with the hydraulic fluid, and so they've added cooling systems. You got to keep in mind that this machine was not necessarily designed to be running all day long, and so you know, run it for a little bit, let it cool down, run it for a little bit, let it cool down, and I found when I was digging out the stump that's just about how it went. You would dig out a little bit, you'd have to go in and cut out a root or something that it couldn't rip out, and then jump back on, dig a little more, you know, let it take a break, cut a root, you know, clean it up, and then keep going. And so, you know, you just got to be aware of that as well. So, but overall, I would say I'm pretty happy with it so far. I'm going to mitigate some of those hoses rubbing on those metal spots where I showed you, tighten up those bolts, and keep working on my holes. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more updates, and we'll see you on the next one.